Now let's go over importing, puppeteering, and modifying captured motion. Let's start by creating a new scout and having him run past the camera in the foreground. Instead of recording or animating the scout motion, this time let's use a motion clip from the backlot of the existing game motion. Select the shot and enter into the motion editor. Use the plus button to create an animation set for a new model. Go ahead and type scout and look for the scout that's inside the HWM directory. These are the player models that get used on higher end machines and have more polygons and better facial controls. Select the scout and click on open. You'll see the scout is floating in front of the active camera, so use the screen manipulator to place him just out of frame. While you're dragging relative to screen on the scout, you can hold down the shift modifier, which will drag the manipulator along the world. Once you've got him in position, hit the E key to jump over to the rotate tool and spin him around so he's facing the direction that we want him to run. That looks pretty good. Now we're ready to import the motion. Right-click on the animation set called Scout 1 and choose Import Sequence. This brings up the activity browser that allows us to blend in the game motions before they get imported. You should see the word Ref on the top left. Click on this pull down and search for Run Primary. There's quite a few activities here on the character, so instead of browsing the scroll field by name, it's easier if you just click on the pull down again to close it and then use the up and down arrows. This will auto-play each activity as they are selected. Once you find Run Primary, click and drag on the Move X slider over to the right so that you can set the speed that you want the imported motion to be running at. Let's just set it at maximum speed. You should see the scout running in place. Click on Open, and now the scout should be running through your shot. He's probably not aimed in the right direction, so let's move and rotate him so his motion has him running through the shot in the foreground. Notice that the screen manipulator is outside of frame. It's often very powerful to move the screen manipulator off of the selected object by adjusting its pivot. Hit Alt-V to bring the manipulator to the center of the view. Now click and drag on the pivot handle on the left-hand side of it so that you can move the pivot in screen space. While you're dragging, hold down the Shift key to place it onto the scout. Notice the yellow cursor that tells you where you're placing the pivot in space. Now, even though we can't see the scout's root object off screen, we can still manipulate it. Go ahead and drag the manipulator to move the scout into frame. If you hold down the Alt key while dragging on the screen space handle, you can adjust depth by waving the mouse to the right and left. Let's bring him a little bit closer. Learning to use the pivot and the screen manipulator to work with objects that are off of screen is worth mastering, especially when you're working with lights or eye targets. Go ahead and play around with it until you're comfortable. Hold down Shift and wave the mouse to the right and left to see how this looks. Alright, that looks alright. Now let's talk about another way to create motion. We're going to use puppeteering this time. So in the work camera, hold down the Control key and select the pyro's head. Hit the up arrow to go to the beginning of the shot. Now we're ready to puppeteer the motion of the pyro's head. To do this, we're going to use the screen manipulator. Click and drag on the free rotate handle for the pyro's head. Get it looking somewhere over to the right. When you're ready to puppeteer the motion, click down on the manipulator, and without letting up, tap the spacebar. Perform the manipulator while time is running, and hit stop when you're done. And now when you preview, you can see that we recorded some puppeteered manipulator motion. This same puppeteering technique works with 3D manipulators and with sliders. I recommend playing around with it until you get the hang of it. We find that after we puppeteer a motion, usually only a portion of it is usable. Let's trim the performance by adjusting the time selection on the floating modification layer. This little section right here seems like the useful part. This would probably look better if it happened earlier. Let's talk about how to retime something. As you may have noticed, when we adjusted the time selection, the motion underneath was staying fixed in time. If you want your adjustments to the time selection to affect the motion, you have to hold down the Alt key. Alt dragging on the time selection is how you move the motion earlier or later. Or, if you resize the time selection, make something slower or faster. Motion puppeteered with manipulators relies on the precision of the mouse. Usually this is pretty low res, and so the motion needs to be smoothed out afterwards. To do this, go ahead and use the procedural preset Smooth. When I block in motion, I tend to puppeteer over and over again, blending in different takes until I get the result that I like. Before I puppeteer a motion, I like to copy all of the existing motion so that I can use it later if I need to. Select all of time, and hit Ctrl-C to copy the current motion for the selected controls into the clipboard. Later, we can use the Paste preset, or Ctrl-V, to apply it back to the time selection. Now you can go ahead and modify the object however you want, and then when you're ready, select a region of time and use the Paste preset. This will crossfade that region of time back to the stored snapshot. Refine the time selection until you like the results, and then hit Enter to drop the modification layer into the motion. All of the animation techniques that you've learned in the last few tutorials were all designed so that you could modify any motion no matter how it was created, whether it was keyframed, imported, or captured from the game. Let's use what we've learned to modify the recorded camera motion on the first shot. Just as before, select the shot, click on the plus button, and this time we're going to choose Create Animation Set for Existing Element. This will bring up a dialog that shows you all of the elements that have been recorded into the selected shot. Go ahead and choose whatever camera is your active camera for the current shot. You can check this by looking at the bottom right of the viewport to see what the active camera name is. So let's select the camera animation set and hit Tab. So before we start modifying the camera motion, let's copy it to the clipboard so that we can paste it back in later. Drag the playhead to the end of the shot so we can make the camera look like it's hitting the rocket. Click and drag on the manipulator to move it into place. You can also use the viewport as a manipulator. We use this a lot to puppeteer camera motion. When you're ready to review your work, hit Control Spacebar. Notice that it's kind of a little bit broken there at the beginning because we moved it over. So now adjust the time selection and pull out a long fall off. Notice that in the viewport there's a 3D motion path that shows us the translation of the camera. It updates as we manipulate, adjust the time selection, or change the fall off curve type. Let's change the fall off curve type to 2. Wave the mouse while holding down Shift to preview. So go ahead and experiment with this until you get a camera move that you like. I'll go ahead and speed up time so you can see how I do it. Don't forget you can blend in the paste preset to reveal back to the earlier state if you need to. And hit enter when you like the result.